In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to breed Dubia roaches. Not only that, you're going to learn a little bit about Dubia roaches. Let's get into it, shall we? So before I show you how to breed the Dubia roaches, I'm going to show you the Dubia roaches lifespan. Why? It's important to know this because then you know when to expect when you're expecting. So if you get a baby of Dubia roach, if you go to the store, you buy like a container full of small Dubia roaches, they're babies. It's going to take 3 to 5 months for those babies to become adults. So after they become adults, it's going to take 2 months for the females, once they're pregnant, to deliver the babies. So 7 months out. If you start off with baby Dubia roaches is what to expect when you want to start a colony. If you get the tiny, tiny babies, it's going to be 7 months until you finally see your colony start to produce more Dubia roaches. But a female, after laying it, can get immediately pregnant again. So that means a female can get pregnant in 2 months, lay the eggs, and in another 2 months have more eggs on the way. So in 1 year, and on average, they do lay about 30 babies. So in 1 year, they can have up to 180, maybe even 200 babies. So for a Dubia colony, I like to say start out with like 50 females. And the difference between a female and a male Dubia roach is this. Females look exactly like this. They have a darker shell. They have no wings at all. I mean, these little tiny wings on them and stuff like that, but they'll have no wings, and a male will have wings. This is what a male Dubia roach looks like. And as you can tell, it's a lot different than the female. So start off with like 50 females and 15 males. You can get like these online. There's tons of places to get these online. Just find them, look for adult Dubia roaches or extra large Dubia roaches, and then hopefully you will have that number. And it goes without saying, it's better to have more girls than males, because if you have that, a lot of the males will fight each other, bite each other's stuff off. A lot of testosterone's going on. They're going to want the females. They're going to battle out. So it's good to have a smaller number of males, but not too small a number. You do want like to have a good enough males to go around to impregnate every single female, and gives you a giant colony. You can have up to 10,000 Dubia roaches with this number. If 50 times 180 in 1 year, that's like 9,000. You can have almost 10,000 Dubia roaches in a year if you do your stuff right. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about how to house them. You can house a Dubia roach in something like this. This is very simple. It's just a bin. This is a Sterlite. I think it's Sterlite. It's a storage bin, right? It's a dark storage bin. They do like darkness, so I just go with the darkness. You can put a lid on this. You don't have to. They're not going to crawl out. They can't crawl up walls. They can't fly out. Even though they have wings, they cannot fly. So I usually just keep the top off this. If you do want to stack them, I do recommend drilling holes in the side. Lots of ventilation. You're going to want lots of ventilation for this. Ventilation is key. If you look right here, I have a giant hole cut, and there's just a screen to keep them from escaping. They cannot escape. The only reason I have this is because my wife will kill me if I don't have a lid on it. But you could totally just leave the lid off and have them going, as long as it's not too high where they can get out. But as you can tell, this is not very high. Drill a ton of holes in the sides and on top if you want to like kind of like stack these. It's the easy part. You could use a 10-gallon tank if you want to, cover the sides, make it dark for them. Also, a heat mat if you need the heat. So I actually don't use any heat, supplemental heat at all for my Dubia roaches, because if you have a hot area in your house, you can keep your Dubia roaches there and they're gonna grow like crazy. Dubia roaches love heat, like 80 to 90 degrees. When it gets above 90, that's a little dangerous. It gets too hot for them, they can die. 80 to 90 degrees, they do very well. They breed really fast in it, and that's a great temperature to keep them at. I keep them above my shelves right here, all along the top, because the heat in this room rises in the summertime, even with my air conditioner. It's like 80 degrees up there, and in the wintertime, it's like 90 degrees up there. So it's like 85 to 90 up top, and that's where they sit, and they breed like crazy doing so. I sell mine off a lot of times. I have so many I have 2 colonies now of Dubia roaches, and I'm gonna set up a third. I'm gonna show you right now how I do it. But also, if you do use a heat mat, you can put this directly on the side of the enclosure. A lot of people do that. They'll just get duct tape, tape it right there, and put it on the side of the enclosure. I already had duct tape on this one before for an old Dubia colony when I had it in a cold room. But you can put it like that on the side of the enclosure. Now, very important to know, don't set this like this, because a heat mat will build up heat and it can melt the plastic. Because if this is set down on something and there's no like ventilation, it's just like closed off surface, it's going to build up heat. That heat's not going to escape. It's going to get really hot. But if you do it on the side, it's not going to build up heat. It's going to have all the extra airflow to get rid of the heat going everywhere else and inside of the enclosure. So that's a very important thing to notice, is you don't want to like close off the heat. You don't want to just like sit this on a piece of, like on a table, and then sit your Dubia roach enclosure on there, because the heat's not going to be able to escape. It's going to get very hot. It's going to possibly catch fire. But you can also prevent that by using a thermostat. This is a thermostat. This is a ReptiZoo dimming thermostat, and you can plug your heat lamp into this, put the little probe inside the enclosure, right up against like the other side where the heat lamp is. You can put the or the heat mat. You could use a heat lamp, but I would say like use a like a ceramic heat emitter or something that doesn't give off a lot of light, maybe like a red heat bulb, you know, that's actually good for something then, huh? Put the thermostat inside of the enclosure, and that way it can shut off the heat mat if it gets a little too hot for your Dubia roaches. Some people though, they'll just slap the heat mat on there and just crank it up. Doesn't even matter, because if it's on the side, it's not really going to cause heat, you know, too much heat. It has to travel through the plastic. It's not going to melt the plastic. The only time it's going to melt the plastic is if it's on the bottom and the heat can't escape. You're just getting a lot of buildup of heat, like 200 degrees of heat just building up consistently. Then it might melt the plastic, but that plastic's pretty good about not melting, especially if you're only going to be putting temps of like 80 to 90 degrees in there. That's going to be perfectly fine. Next up is soil. For my bins, I like to use soil. I literally go to Home Depot and just get topsoil, play sand. Cost me $10. You get 40 pounds, you get like 90 pounds of it all together. Mix that together, about 50-50. So I like to sometimes do like 80-20. It depends. I don't want it too sandy, but I want a little bit of sand in there, right? Now, if you don't want to do like go to Home Depot, you don't want to go to store, Repti soil and Repti sand works perfectly fine as well. You can mix those together. You could just use Repti soil if you want to. Put that straight in there. Cocoa fiber. I'm not a big fan of cocoa fiber at all. If you know me, you know that deep down, I hate cocoa fiber. It's terrible. But if you want to use cocoa fiber, I guess you can too. It's just that it never holds humidity well for me. But Dubia roaches do like humidity between like 40 to 60%. And it's good for breeding, so that way the eggs don't dry out inside of the female. The female actually carries the eggs inside of her, and too dry conditions can dry those eggs out. She'll just abort them, throw them on the ground, just be dried up egg sac. You lost some babies along the way. So I do like to fill it up like 3 inches of substrate inside of the bins, and you can add isopods. All my enclosures for my Dubia roaches are bioactive. I have leaves in there. I have isopods. I have springtails. That way all the poop, I don't have to clean them out. I don't have to clean my bins out ever. They eat the poop. Maybe sometimes the shells of the old dead Dubia roaches are still in there, and I'll take that out. But pretty much all the isopods. Now be very careful this method, because the Dubia roaches poop like crazy, and if you do this, you can have way too much isopods. Like I've bred tons of isopods, but you can throw any isopods in a Dubia roach bin, and they're going to do very well. But I have literally, there was times where I was taking like 100 isopods out at night, every single day for like a month, and it just seems like they were just breeding like so much. It's an insane way to breed your isopods if you want to do that. So be very careful. I will say, if you put isopods in there, they breed like crazy, like crazy with the Dubia roaches. So warning on that part. But I do that, and I feel like it works perfectly fine, because Dubia roaches can get a little nasty. They are roaches, you know what I mean? Very much roaches, so they can get a little nasty at times. And then I get some egg crates. Egg crates are good because they're disposable. Once the Dubia roaches poop on them, you can just throw them away, get some more. They sell them at Walmart in the like pet aisle, like for chickens. They sell them online. I'll have everything linked in the description if you want to do that. But I get egg crates. You just line them up straight up. I actually have to cut mine in half for this bin, and it makes it last longer. And I probably replace the egg bins like maybe once every 6 months. But put the egg bins straight up, so that way when they crawl, they have tons of places to crawl. It provides more room, more hiding for all of the babies and the Dubia roaches. And then that way, poop will also fall down. It won't hide up. You know, if you have the egg crates, I can't speak today. If you have the egg crates flat, the poop's going to settle in there. It's going to get really nasty. But if you put them straight up, it's going to fall right through the cracks onto the bottom, and the isopods are going to eat them. And if the isopods don't eat them, that's totally fine as well. But you probably have to change out the substrate every like 3 to 4 months inside of this Dubia roach colony if you do it this way without isopods. But I put soil in mine because the humidity does help the Dubia roaches pretty well. Let's move on to the next subject. The next thing we're going to talk about is the diet for the roaches. What can you feed your roaches that's good for them, that's going to make them breed, that's going to be wonderful? I feed my roaches, the main diet they eat is literally carrots, collard greens, turnip greens, mustard greens, spring mix, kale. That's like their main diet every time I feed them. Like they always get that. But I also give them treats as well, like oranges. Anytime I have oranges, I might get a little old or something like that. Bananas, apples. There's tons of stuff you can feed them in vegetable list. I think some people feed them sweet potatoes. I rarely buy sweet potatoes for myself, and also I don't ever feed them that. And the reason I feed them that is because it's good gut load. It's a great, like if you want to feed this off to your bearded dragons and stuff, that's a great gut load to get them going. Now, one thing I will say, if you want them to breed faster, I notice oranges do the trick. Oranges do really well for making them breed faster. But avoid that as a gut load. If you want them to breed, use that. But as a gut load, stick to the stuff I said before. That's what I feed for gut load. And I throw in some oranges and other stuff for like breeding faster. You want to stay away from the high protein stuff, feeding these guys that, because high protein is generally a little bit not as good for bearded dragons, because it's a whole thing. But anyways, that's the diet. It's easy. Like I said, carrots are really cheap. Lettuce is really cheap. I feed my romaine lettuce. Now, you're probably thinking about water. Do they need water? Of course they need water. but they usually get all of their moisture and water contents from the fruit and vegetables. That's why it's really good to feed them just regular fruits and vegetables, fresh, cheap fruits and vegetables. Romaine lettuce, I get lettuce all the time. Throw it in there, they get all their water from that. You can offer a water dish, but be very careful because they will drown themselves. You need it to be very shallow. Some people will like put a sponge in there with water on there. Some people will put a bowl with like aquarium gravel on there. And that way the water's filled up, they can still walk on the gravel and not, drown. And they can escape the bowl. But a lot of times if you put a bowl in there and it's smooth, most bowls are smooth, or even if it's like too deep and they can't touch the bottom, they will drown. So I don't give mine water at all. I give them just the lettuce and all that stuff, and they get it through that. They're very hardy. They are roaches, again. And they will eat anything you want. But since they are for your reptiles, we got to watch their diet a little bit. But that's pretty much it. Now you can breed your Dubia colony and even start more after that. It might take a while if you got babies, like I said. I hope this helped. If it did, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.